Hey guys, welcome back to another Q&A on March 29th, 2020. So let's see, this week, some good questions. A lot of people are still in quarantine lockdown, so definitely the questions filled up pretty quick, I would imagine, for that reason. But let's see, let's go over here to Instagram first. All right, so first question is, how do you set up a DC training split? Well, I mean, the actual split or layout, if you're doing like the traditional two-way DC split, which is going to be based around two workouts. One will be chest, shoulders, triceps, back. And then back is split into two exercises, or width and thickness if you want to split it up that way. The other workout would be biceps and forearms or brachialis, and calves, quads, hamstrings. All right, so two workouts, a couple ways you can do it. You can pick an A1, B1, A2, B2, so you have different exercises in each one. It's like 4 different workouts, and then kind of rotate through. So your week would be typically 3 days, typically how it's set up. A1, B1, A2. Next week, B2, A1, B1. You know what I'm saying. So just keep rotating through. Exercise selection is, I talked about this on a different video. It's really just based on a couple things, based on, what kind of exercises can you progress well on, have a large window of progression, and which exercises are going to be the best bang for your buck. You keep in mind you're doing basically one working set for most exercises, maybe 2, depending on how it's set up. So your working sets are pretty limited. So you're not going to do a bunch of single joint movements. Most likely it's going to be compound lifts or things that you're able to generate pretty good poundages, pretty good intensity, and get a high RIR, so high return on your investment, or high RIR. Yeah, no, it's going to be low RIR, high return on investment, right? ROI. So yeah, pick exercises that suit you biomechanically. Pick exercises that you have a large room for progression. Pick exercises that give you the most bang for your buck. So those are the things that I would look at mainly when setting up the split. And an actual layout of the split, you can find samples online. It's not overly difficult to find. All right, so and anything beyond that, I need to know more about you specifically, like in terms of like what exercises to pick, where to put them, whether you should do a rest pause or a straight set on them, or what. That's kind of an individual thing, but something you have to experiment with. All right, have you noticed individuals who have smaller meals and frequency, or I'm guessing more frequency, have better digestion versus someone eating two to 3 larger volume throughout the day? Or is it more or less individualized? I eat 3 meals per day, sometimes 4 tops, but first and last largest. Okay, so I'm guessing first and last are largest. Used to be 5 to 6 times a day, but my schedule now is simplified to 3 times, plus I like the volume. But always wondering if digestion could be even more improved or less bloated by switching back, or finding a happy medium. Digestion is decent now, but always looking to improve. I do take betaine HCl when needed. You kind of answered your own question in there, in that it really lies in volume, food selection and volume, right? So you're going to eat foods that digest well, and those foods are going to kind of be similar, whether it's 3 meals or 5 meals. But the volume is what makes the difference. So really pay attention to how much volume you're getting within your meals. People will go to lower meal frequency for convenience and then also for volume. And that's kind of a trap in a way, because yeah, you can do that to an extent, but you know, obviously if you're putting 2 or 3 pounds of food in your stomach at a time, or large amounts of food, then yes, it's going to cause GI issues, it's going to cause inflammation. It's just going to be way too much to break down. Now, yes, you have more time between meals to digest, which is a benefit, right? But it's only really a benefit if you're choosing a reasonable amount of food volume. So don't fall into that trap. I know it's really easy to push it and really easy to push volume. I mean, if you're having massive amounts of vegetables and massive amounts of fibrous types of things, or just filler type foods, or that have high water content, or whatever it is, yeah, it's not going to help. You're going to have problems with digestion. So there's really not, yeah, I mean, in pretty much by default, the smaller, more frequent meals are going to be a little bit easier in that regard. But the less frequent, less meal frequency doesn't have to be worse on digestion. It's just that you have to, you know, you can't eat tons and tons and tons of food at every meal. It has to be a reasonable amount of food. So if you like it for convenience, that's great. It's fine, you know, do it, but you're gonna have to back off food volume. People run into that trap way too easy, and their meals get just way too big. Especially if you're doing, you know, kind of more liberal, flexible dieting and just trying to figure out like all kinds of ways to make your meals gigantic. That's not a good thing to do. It's definitely gonna kind of wreck your GI and cause inflammation and bloating. So there you go. Increasing test closer to a show, or drop a few weeks out. It depends. Really just depends. No, there's no way to say yes or no. I mean, a lot of people drop it because they want to pull estrogen down a little bit. Now we know estrogen does help with fat loss kind of indirectly, and you might not want to crush it the whole time, but towards the end it can help with some of those areas that are more stubborn fat loss wise. But yeah, I mean, it really depends on the person's look. Like, do they look peeled and dry, and do they need to even mess with it? I mean, if someone's really lean and their fat cells are pretty shrunken down, then they're not really going to be holding much water. They might look better, right? They might look better just leaving it alone and maintaining a little more fullness. Other people might look better taking it out. So that's going to be pretty individual. That's kind of a hard one to answer. Dealing with gyno issues on a TRT dose, 116 milligrams per week, with estrogen in the lower range because of AI use, would substituting a small amount of DHT, so like Masteron, Proviron, instead of an AI, be able to control the gyno and be overall healthier long run, since estrogen isn't being suppressed? Maybe, but if at 116 milligrams a week, a couple things, you know, making sure that you're splitting, probably try higher frequency, even daily if you need to. It's gonna be such a small amount. You can go daily, help with less swings up and down of aromatization, make it more steady. That's worth a try. Yeah, I mean, the DHT you could, but it's still like adding more, you know, more drugs to combat the issue. Now, it still is technically controlling estrogen, right? The DHT component kind of lowering aromatase activity to some extent. So, I mean, it's still, yeah, it's not suppressing it super low, but it's still suppressing it some. If that makes sense. Not like an anti-estrogen necessarily, but it is still changing that balance. Might be worth just a SERM even. Nolvadex, relaxafine seems to be even better. I've seen a couple studies that show that it's even more effective in actually being more specific to the breast receptor, I guess. And so that might be worth a shot. Granted, it does kind of change the IGF axis some, so I mean, in terms of muscle growth, but kind of weigh your pros and cons there, right? that option would probably be a little bit better than the AI or DHT option. So that's something worth doing. But if you're really spreading it out on a pretty high frequency and you're doing something like a SERM, and SERM being Novodex or tamoxifen or relaxifene, and you're still having issues, then you probably have some seriously sensitive receptors and there's a lot of binding going on. You probably just need to get it taken care of. I mean, it's normal physiological range at that point, right? It's not like you're above your super physiological range of testosterone levels. Shouldn't need an AI. You just need to get rid of it at that point. But there's a couple options there I mentioned. Increased frequency, maybe try SERM. That's up to you, right? And those are probably going to be better options. Any tips you have for creating a client base from scratch and providing quality training, nutrition advice to get your hustle off the ground? I know it's a broad one, so answer however you like. Thank you. Oh, that's a hard one for me because I am not a marketing genius in any stretch. So I started, like, my business is super organic in the sense that, yeah, I put out a ton of content, but I've been doing it for so long and just been helping people for a pretty long period of time before social media was like really the platform to use to promote like it is now. So, I mean, I was kind of already more established at that point. But, some people do market a lot more. They their posts are more markety type, their graphics, their YouTube videos or whatever. That's not really how I do it. Just more word of mouth. And, that's really what's going to make business last anyhow, right? Now, with that said, you do need to have some kind of, it's a dense market, right? So first off, like, figure out what your demographic is and try to appeal to them, right? So if I know the person asking this wants to do more, I know who they are, it's one of my clients. So they ask me about it, want to do more gen pop, help people for cheap. Help people for cheap. Be like, hey, help them out, help them reach some goals, tell them to tell their friends. They get results, tell them to write you a little testimonial, excerpt. Doesn't have to be anything crazy. Build that way. That's the quickest way. You're not just going to jump in there and with no name and people are going to be like, oh yeah, I want to work with you. You might have to help them for cheap or even free, I went to a fitness business seminar, I guess you want to call it, a couple years ago. It was actually this t-shirt. It's Elite FTS Business Summit. But one of the guys was actually talking about do shit for free. And I did a bunch of shit for free for quite a while. And made me better, right? The more I work with people, the better I get, or you should. But you have to, and then you have to spread it that way. But if you can do that, if you can offer them, be like, look, I'm trying to get my business off the ground. I want to work with people for cheaper, discounted rates, and it will snowball that way if you do a good job and you're nice to people. The other thing is, to me at least, don't burn bridges. Don't be an asshole to clients. If you have a bad experience with them, they don't like you or whatever, just, okay, I'm sorry about that. My door's open. If you need anything, let me know. Try to not burn bridges. Everything comes around, and you really, they don't tell their friends that you're a dick, right? So now you have potential for them to tell their friends. It's funny because I get referrals often from former clients of mine that told their friends, and these people haven't worked with me for 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, I don't know, whatever years. and they're telling their friends, and then I get referrals from so-and-so. I'm like, oh yeah, I worked with them 4 years ago. And maybe they were comfortable with where they're at, and they didn't work with me anymore, and they told their friends, right? So that's kind of my advice. I know that's like super basic, but free stuff, man, free or cheap, and build on that. That's gonna be the quickest way. You can build up quick, right? I mean, you can build up decently quick that way, and it's a good, and if it's a side hustle, it's cool, right? It's not like you're gonna jump right in and think that you're gonna be doing it full time in the first 6 months or something ridiculous, or even the first year. Yeah, maybe if you were freaking awesome at it, you could maybe get enough clients to do it in the first year, but that would be pretty stressful and a lot of volatility there. And it's like, I don't know, wouldn't want to risk that, but that's kind of where things are at. That's at least what I would suggest. So I hope that helps. Let's see. All right, so just got a couple more here. Okay. Steps to take when helping a client who is currently hyperthyroid, aside from avoiding excess iodine. Context. Goal is to feel better as well as regain muscle loss during thyroid flare-up. All right. So, hyperthyroid, so high. Most of the people are more familiar with hypothyroid. Hyperthyroid is usually, there's kind of a small, I mean, not small, but typically common causes. It's more like a smaller list of reasons. They said flare up. So you get a flare up like thyroiditis or like an autoimmune flare up and cause overproduction. It's an inflammation issue. So it's it's inflammatory driven. Common causes of this would be like tumors on the gland, tumors on a different gland that might be involved in signaling to the thyroid, like pituitary or something. Also, autoimmune issue, which are largely inflammatory driven, so like Graves' disease. But it's not, a lot of time it's not the, outside of like I said, like excess iodine consumption, which normally isn't the cause. It's usually related to something else downstream. So you really need to try to investigate and figure out what that is. Blood work, lab work, that's useful, right? Testing full right up on thyroid. So getting TSH, T4, T3, free T4, free T3, reverse T3, definitely want to get that. Also antibodies. If there's a hyperthyroid issue, definitely want to check antibodies, like your common ones like TPO. Need to be checking all that full antibody panel, and chances are they're probably something out of whack there in terms of like antibody wise. But yeah, you're gonna need to figure out what is actually causing the flare-ups. Look at what else happened around the time of the flare-up. Was there another hormonal imbalance going on at the time that kind of coincided with the flare-up itself? And then you can kind of figure out, okay, this is part of the issue, this is a cause, this is indirectly, this is why, so on and so forth. So figure, trace your steps back, right? Essentially, that's what you're doing. And figure out where the issue lies there. And then from there, you're going to be able to figure out probably what caused the flare-up. If they have a pre-existing autoimmune condition, then they probably have something else going on also hormonally and inflammation-wise. So you got to figure it out, because it's not like outside of a tumor that's causing it, like a benign tumor, which you'd have to have some kind of imaging. You'd have to have imaging done to see it, right? It's something else, probably unrelated to the thyroid gland, that is causing it, right? So, all right, last one: abdominal and calf training, frequency, and your favorite, most effective exercises with minimal equipment. I'll start with calf training. I have really shitty high insert calves, so they look okay from the back. They look okay from the side. They look like trash from the front because they don't like hang down to my ankles like a lot of people. They're you know, like really short. But training wise, I personally, one of the only things I found that's helped me is mixing up volume and just rep schemes and all that. So like a 3-way rotation of one higher rep day, a few sets like really high rep, like 50 to 100. Another day it's like normal rep ranges but higher volume, so like 8 to 10 sets of 8 or 10 reps, just good quality reps, a little more weight. And then maybe another day of like cell swelling based, where it's like more like the sarcoplasmic hypertrophy type of model, using BFR or something, right? So mixing it up, stretching, use some long static stretching in there too if you can. Frequency, I do them every session. That's how I've done it. That's what's helped me. Unless my feet hurt, I won't do them. But typically what I suggest, unless they feel like really under recovered, then I'll stop. But it's going to be, man, that's super genetic based. You know, some people I have clients that have great calves and they never touch them. I never even have them train them at all. They just don't need to, unfortunately. That's kind of how it goes. But exercises, you don't need anything fancy. I mean, if you want to train them in 2 different positions where you have a bent knee in one, more of a 90 degree, and then just like a straight leg or just barely slightly bent knee in the other, for more, it's like soleus and gastroc, you know, depending on which, you know, like leg position. It's really all you need. Like I have a leg press that the foot plate, like the foot plate here, it moves down so I can put my toes like up on the end of it, hang my heel over, stretch, squeeze. And then I have a block, like a calf block, and I have a little box to sit on, put the calf block in front of me, put plates on my end of my legs, like down by my knees, go up and down. That's my seated calf. That's it. This doesn't need to be anything real fancy. And you can replicate that without a block. You put your feet on like a 2x4, right? Or the edge of something. It doesn't really matter. So it's not really hard to replicate. And you could replicate a standing calf really easily and just hold weight in your hands or something, right? If you really had to. Let's see. Abdominal. Minimal equipment. One of the ones I like is a foam roller crunch / sit up. It's pretty hard. Put that around your low back, kind of go in slight hyperextension. Get a good stretch in your abs. You can come up, blow out your air a little bit, tighten down, pulls everything in. It's a good. It's tough if you do them right. Like I know when I first did them, I get like 12 reps. It was, you know, it just hammered my abs. Rope crunches. If you have that, or you can do it with a band attached to something. I kind of like to do them slightly back at kind of a front angle where I'm leaning. That way when I stretch, we'll go this way. That way when I stretch, I kind of get like slight hyperextension, and I can crunch in. Slight hyperextension, can crunch in, right? That's the way I feel them best. Those are good compound exercises, right? But yeah, I mean, you could do those 2 things and you'd be good to go. You can train transverse, do leg lifts too if you want to go, if you have a hard time feeling your lower abdominals. But transverse abdominals, so pelvic tilt, Google that, hit YouTube, pelvic tilt's pretty easy to find. Vacuums, right, for just abdominal control in general, blow out air, and then pull vacuums. So yeah, not hard. Frequency wise, it depends on if you want to build them up, if you really need to build them up, or if they're weak. So building them up musculature wise and having like a weak abdominal wall, yeah, the 2 things go hand in hand. But what's the point? Is it more like a stronger core that you're looking for, or because of safety purposes and certain lifts, or do you like actually need like deeper abdominals? You know, so that's going to be up to the person. Frequency, a couple times a week, 2-3 times. If you train them effectively like that, you should be good to go. All right, guys. I think that's it for this week, and we'll talk to you.